Namaskar everyone for another great, brilliant session of Rock Talks. Today we have Dr. Megha from Thane, India. She is a urban regional planner and social entrepreneur, and she has lots to tell about herself. I won't be able to do justice looking at her LinkedIn profile as to what all she has achieved and what all she has done. I think she better introduce herself. Over to Dr. Megha.
Thank you, and I'm really excited to be here and talking with you, connecting with you. I'm Dr. Megha Phansarkar, and I've been born and brought up in Madhya Pradesh, in Mahu, near Indore, until my graduation, and then I shifted to Ahmedabad, and I did my master's in urban and regional planning from Center for Environmental Planning and Technologies, commonly known as CEPT Ahmedabad. I also qualified for UGC during the same time and availed my master's scholarship as well as availed my scholarships for PhD. Post my master's, double master's, first in geography from Madhya Pradesh and then master's in urban and regional planning. In 1992, I registered for my doctorate in system designing for resource planning and management under UGC fellowship and completed around 1997. Between my masters and my PhD, I got married, and then the kids followed, and all such things happened. My PhD was mostly post marriage, and so after that, since 1998, when I received my PhD, I've been working in the development sector and mostly with the government. And my actually proper job started with government of Maharashtra as a knowledge management advisory at the sector level. And we had a World Bank project on water sanitation. And it took me around 7 years. I was working as a knowledge management expert there. And I could do a lot of good interaction with communities because it was one of the first pioneer project where communities were instrumental in planning and implementation of their water supply sanitation schemes. And it was a part of the reforms approach where water supply department of the government of Maharashtra, along with the World Bank Jal Swaraj project, we had rolled down this innovative approaches, and it was a great success. Post that, since 2007, I've been mostly involved with the World Bank and in India as well as Nepal and other countries. And I am also instrumental in doing a lot of livelihood projects until recently. And so we had two kind of interventions. One was, of course, rural water supply sanitation, including in urban areas, city sanitation planning. And that was the talk of the town those times. And it still continues that we are depending on a lot of communities to come forward and take ownership in these projects. During the same time, I could support through World Bank a lot of open defecation free status in rural Maharashtra as well as rural India in multiple states. And thankfully to all these interventions from government of India, we are open defecation free officially in rural and urban areas. So I've been instrumental in putting up a lot of policies and a lot of field level experiences and learnings across the sector. Since 2010, I believe I've been very strongly involved in the rural livelihood missions pan India in many of the states, including Maharashtra, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Orissa, and the entire model of rural livelihood mission is empowering women in the sector and creating self-help groups and higher level federations, including cluster level federations and block level federations, where women can take lead role and generate livelihood for themselves in farm and non-farm sector. So when I started working in this particular segment, I came across a lot of artisans and the entire non-farm sector value chain, and discovered that it's a quite a lot of struggle for them, and farm livelihood, at least get a rural livelihood within their locality, and they can sell their products, be it grains, or be it spices, or be it vegetables. But the non-farm sector, especially the handicraft and handloom, really struggle for the market, and because they need a lot of clientele coming from the cities and national international level, as well as they need a lot of design support, they need a lot of logistic supports, they need a lot of value chain has to be created very strongly. And there I realized that something different has to be done. And then I, being my nature of a more adventurous nature, I decided to work into this segment, and I created my own social entrepreneurship from 2015. And that is how we are supporting around artisans in 12 states now. And through skill building, through livelihood generation, through market linkage, through design support. And it has been a wonderful journey, and like all other entrepreneurs, like all other startup, it's been a quite a roller coaster ride. And but it has been a very creative field, and I've enjoyed working in this sector. In between, since 2 years back, I also got selected on a steering committee from South Asia as an elected member in a UN based water and sanitation collaborative council. Now it is Sanitation Hygiene Fund, and I'm part of the advisory there and part of the steering committee. And we support across the globe, in multiple countries, and especially where there is open defecation is a great challenge, especially a lot of African countries and a few Asian countries also, because in this particular sector, slippage is a big problem. While even you declare yourself ODF, a lot of communities continue to be in open defecation status because of water problem or technical problem or behavior issues. So I represent South Asia there, and contribute my bit in the policies as well as the strategies of the sector. And this has been a great honor for me being on a UN body. So, recently, I have also shifted my career in the urban sector now, and working very aggressively in the slums, as well as making inclusive cities in the country. Inclusive cities, we mean by cities which are gender open, which are more friendly for differently abled, as well as for children, as well as for aged population. I am focusing very strongly on data-driven development policies which enable decision making based on community feedback and community involvement. So, in short, my focus has always been community at large, be it rural or urban, and then of course social entrepreneurship with artisans. So it has been a wonderful journey till now, and I look forward in my last bit of career, which could be 10 years more ahead, I believe, considering 60 as a retirement age or nearby. But I would love to be in this sector for giving my learnings of so many years, 25 years now, and it's been a great journey. And I look forward to be in the sector.
So, Dr. Megha, with that inspiring introduction of yours, I would like to ask you one question which comes to everybody's mind. Social entrepreneurship sounds like not for profit or doing work as charity. Most people today, also women folk of today, the young inspiring girls of today, will look at this as a career option if they are able to make money or salary, not handsome salary, but some salary. So how does this work? Number one. Number two is I would like to ask you, how do you, being a lady, managed work-life balance, looking at your tight schedule and things like that, so that it inspires the viewers who are going to look at this video?
Question are very interesting and very close to my heart. So the first question on social entrepreneurship. So when I started this, those things came into my mind, that are we going to, is this for charity, is this for philanthropy, or is this a pure business? But one thing is always sure, that livelihood is important, and charity takes you a bit towards it, but then when you want to grow to a scale, and when you want to support multiple artisans, be it in India, and now we have also grown to South Asia, so there has to be a business model into that, and it is not always easy to work in a NGO kind of mode, because NGO kind of mode basically depends on funding from other people, be it say CSR, be it government, and it is not always easy to acquire those funds. So we did a hybrid model, and that's how I think that was the success of this entire game. Of course, we cannot say it is a success. It's a journey towards success. We are yet bootstrapped and always keep on struggling, and especially during the COVID, the struggles were more. So basically, when this journey started, we registered both the agencies together. We started a private limited because there was always this idea of doing a proper business, bring venture funding, take a startup to a higher scale, and we can generate revenue, so that the revenue passes to the artisans and livelihood is generated more and more. So a proper structure with a GST, with a proper audits and everything was required. A proper business was required, which we can always think from a franchisee mode. We can always go from a distributor mode. We can always do exports. So we don't want any kind of hindrance as far as the business is concerned. And if ventures find interest in this entire foundation and this social entrepreneurship, we welcome that. So regarding work-life balance, it's very interesting because I come from a community jithe aisa, I mean, you don't do much kind of business kind of activities. And in my families or in my generations, both sides, nobody had tried business. So there is so much of hostility towards that idea itself, that you are going to become an entrepreneur. So it always starts with the question, what is the need? I mean, World Bank is going so well, and you are doing so many other assignments, you are already so busy, there is no time in the life, so why this something new? So that's why, and I think those questions come much more for a woman in almost all kinds of strata, be it in the rural areas, be it in the slums, or be it at any level, because there are certain expectations and there are certain duties you have to do, and it I don't know, there is a stigma that women cannot do a business. So basically, it was very difficult for me to convince my family, myself also, that already career requires a lot of time. And then when I am going to start a social entrepreneurship, especially as my own startup, which is a bootstrap, where I have to invest my own money, time, and energy, it's going to be at the cost of something else. And so I convinced myself first, and then my family, and then it started slowly, but we all know that entrepreneurship is quite a struggle. And being a startup and being not from this particular business families, or say where you have a lot of money to invest and try it out something, whether it works or does not work, we don't have so much of liberty. And that's why it was more of a struggle. But end of the day, you have that kind of pleasure in your mind, that you are supporting a lot of staff as far as the livelihood is concerned, and then you are supporting so much of livelihood.
When people say I'm becoming an entrepreneur and I have all these hardships, the thing is that they are not alone. Everybody is going through it, and everybody is suffering through it, and everybody overcomes that challenge. I think being persistent and continuing with it is what will take you closer to your goal. So I think that was quite inspiring, and I think that is commendable on your part, that you have for so many years pursued hard and uh, continued with your passion and reached till this great levels, and still making an impact to the larger part of society. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Dr. Megha, thanks a lot for coming on Drop Talks and sharing valuable insights. I think this this video will inspire a lot of women and also men to look at social entrepreneurship as a career option or looking at their career over there. Your insight was very helpful. In fact, the kind of challenges that you faced and uh, eventually you have reached kind of nice levels in your career path, and I hope you progress very well. Uh, there are some things which people would like to take away at the end of the conversation. If you could throw your light on that, and also speak a little on how has the COVID scenario changed your business, or how have you adapted to the new situation. So once again, thanks a lot and gratitude for coming on the show. The pleasure is entirely mine.
Thank you for hosting me. And of course, as an entrepreneur, it is always, we love to share our journeys. And because we are here to learn and unlearn a lot of things. And if we can become instrumental for other entrepreneurs through our learning and unlearning process and let them shorten the path of learning and unlearning, it's good. Because end of the day, a person who becomes a social entrepreneur, only two qualities are required for them: compassion and passion. So you have to have a compassion for the sector, and you want to do something different from the sector. For the sector, you want to do something innovative for the sector. You have to put your time, money, and energy for the sector. And then whatever you do, there has to be a passion towards it, because end of the day, no, everybody knows that social entrepreneurship or any kind of entrepreneurship is a struggle. And but it's a lot of happiness also. And it's more of a roller coaster ride, where when you are sitting on the ride and you are on the top and then coming down, you always feel, oh, why did I sit here? Who pushed me in this particular place? Because there is so much of adrenal flow in the body, and then you keep on yelling and shouting. But end of the day, when you get down, you should feel happy about it.